One of the areas that we've began to pay a lot of focus and attention to is this idea of decarbonization, right? We understand that nature will do part of the job, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And so it's an opportunity that's going to have multiplier effects across our economy that we need to take advantage. Our climate vulnerability allows not only for us to demonstrate the way that we can adapt well to climate, but also that we can lead in really turning this conversation around and having a complete paradigm shift. The transition is ongoing, so we might as well embrace it and reap the benefits of the opportunity that it presents.
Hi everyone, I'm Suzette Leboy, the Editorial Director for Opportunity Miami, and today I'm joined by Sofia Leon with the Nature Conservancy. Thank you for joining us.
Sure, thank you for having me.
We're going to be talking about how Florida can decarbonize and how that could eventually spur a strong economy for us. So how do the two kind of correlate?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of background on the Nature Conservancy. We are the world's largest conservation organization. We have staff in over 70 countries and boots on the ground in every one of the 50 US states. We're a very science-based organization. We were founded in 1951 with very much the ethos of protecting land from development, so very much that sort of land conservation identity, which has evolved over the years in response to our environment, no pun intended. But now the organization is laser focused on dealing with the dual global crises that we're dealing with: biodiversity loss and climate change, right? With that, a lot of the sort of earlier years of the Nature Conservancy were really focused on land conservation. In Florida, we were founded in 1961, and we protected over 1.3 million acres across the state of Florida. We had a hand in forming the National Keys Marine Sanctuary and the Florida Wildlife Corridor and establishing those, and very much leveraging nature to do the things of the services to biodiversity and to do the services for the climate. But in recent years, one of the areas that we've began to pay a lot of focus and attention to is this idea of decarbonization, right? We understand that nature will do part of the job. By restoring and protecting nature, you can essentially tackle 30% of the climate problem, but there's a lot more that needs to be done, and we understand as the Nature Conservancy that decarbonization is a big feat that we need to undertake together. Is basically how this study, the idea of this study came about. We just
Can you
published.
quickly introduce what the title is?
Sure. So the study is looking at the economic benefits of decarbonizing Florida's economy. We did this study over the course of 2 years in partnership with AECOM and Cambridge Econometrics. And we also convened a small sort of technical advisory committee to give feedback on the project along 2 different points in its timeline. Actually, Matt Hagman gave feedback, was part of that committee, and a lot of other experts across our community. And the study is looking at 2 scenarios: net zero power grid by 2035 and a net zero economy by 2050. The reason really why we did this study was because we understand that decarbonization is a daunting task. It's one that also seems very expensive, and that is concerning for industry leaders and for business leaders and also for government leaders, right? What this study proves is that we as Floridians stand to gain more than it will cost us, right? We're going to benefit more than the cost that we're going to put in over the years. And so it's an opportunity that's going to have multiplier effects across our economy that we need to take advantage. And that's the reason why the Nature Conservancy sort of enters this space, is an opportunity to engage business leaders, engage governments around this conversation of what it is they're going to take to decarbonize, what are the areas where we need to focus most of our energy and investments, and how can we have a conversation about why this isn't so scary and it isn't so expensive that it's going to break us, right? Quite the contrary. It's going to generate a lot of benefit and opportunity.
I mean, you called it a start of a conversation almost, and I think it's very important. And you mentioned power grids, which is actually something that I believe it was Bloomberg recently just put out a study that said that the window to reach those net zero emissions is rapidly closing, and there's just a handful of industries that are somewhat viable, and including, they actually said EVs, renewable power, storage, and grid. So is that basically what you found? Like, does Florida have these industries already in place to get us to those goals?
Yes. So Florida, what we found is Florida, in fact, does stand to gain a lot from decarbonizing. Florida is the 3rd largest emitter in the country, right? We use a lot of energy. Our 2 highest sectors of emissions are transportation, obviously, and energy, because we need a lot of AC. It's very hot here. We need a lot of energy, and more people are moving here, right? So we're going to have to provide for those energy needs, and we're going to have to strengthen that grid as well. And so the recognition that we are in the Sunshine State and we should be taking advantage of that, and that We are also at a time where there's a lot of investment on behalf of the federal government. So there are a lot of opportunities to sort of lessen that hit, that upfront investment, and to sort of bring in different streams. And this is where TNC steps in too, because not only are we leveraging this study to have a conversation about how it can be done, and in fact it's beneficial, and how are these benefits essentially going to reach Floridians.
And do you think then having, we're in a very much a business-centered economy, obviously. Do you think then honing in on decarbonization is a way to go to have that conversation focus on climate? Absolutely. I think that's one of the reasons we did the study, right? I mean, we can talk about why clean energy is great for our environment. We can talk about, the amount of emissions that we're really putting out there and what we need to do to correct those across all the sectors. And there's a lot of compelling reasons to do that. But yes, we do need to make the business case that financially it's viable, that there's a lot of ways to get it done now, and that we're going to grow, right? I mean, the study is looking at the very end of it all, by the end of 2050, our economy is still growing. It's at least a 2%, almost 2% higher or larger of an economy, and our economy is going to continue to grow and create a lot of opportunities within it to sort of transform the goods and services and the way we provide for our energy needs. Was there, in the report, maybe like some of the key findings that we can go over, and also like what is the biggest one that can make the biggest impact? There's a lot of different impacts that you see throughout. So first, what's the Florida of 2050 that we envision? We always talk about that, right? And I think with regard to decarbonization, we see, first of all, obviously a clean energy production, right? We envision taking advantage of the full opportunity that sunshine provides. We envision an economy that works for a lot of people and skills that we don't currently maybe have, but that there's an opportunity to create. There are higher paying jobs, still at a low level entry with specific skills that can allow for entrepreneurial opportunities, a spin-off, right? So there's a lot of these higher paying jobs that are going to create an excess in income. Also, you have the savings from, what we're going to save on power generation, what we're going to save on the cost of how we power our vehicles, our homes. So then you have some residual income that then creates sort of this multiplier effect across our economy, right? With more available funds to invest in other areas of our economy, Florida is a very service-oriented economy as well. So there is this sort of momentum to take advantage of multiplier opportunities from decarbonizing. And the report found that the economy can grow by what percent? Nearly 2% by the end of 2050 is a very conservative estimate of at the very least, we're not losing, we're growing. But I think there's going to be a lot that, the data keeps shifting. I mean, I think it was in 2022, 5% of all of our energy was electric in Florida. In 2021. In the first half of 2023, we've already added more solar capacity than any other state in the US. So the growth is happening even, we're putting out this study to say let's do it, but it's happening regardless. We know energy leaders in the state are taking initiative on transitioning to solar. So I think it's happening. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's lean in and be curious, and let's have conversations with business leaders, and let's make Florida this place that, as you all say so often, right? We have better jobs, higher paying jobs. We have a clean, economy, and then we continue to grow as this hub for manufacturing, for energy, this thought leader in technology, and this profitable destination for innovators and investors it's all the things that are going to make our economy grow, a lot of which isn't really accounted for tangibly in the study, but that we know it's kind of the effect, right? The aura around these changes. I mean, is it simply a matter of changing the conversation then? Because, you hinted at the beginning that, people see decarbonization efforts as costly and also timely, right? It's time consuming and it's going to cost a lot of money. Is it really going to pay off for me to put solar panels on my house? Is it a matter of changing the narrative in a way? Yeah, I think it is. I think Florida's a tricky place to have these conversations. It always has been. But more and more we have an acknowledgement on behalf of very diverse stakeholders across our state that this is an issue we need to deal with, right? And that our climate vulnerability allows not only for us to demonstrate the way that we can adapt well to climate, but also that we can lead in really turning this conversation around and having a complete paradigm shift on what the future offers. And it's upon us, it's happening, the transition is ongoing.
So we might as well embrace it and really make the most out of it and reap the benefits of the opportunity that it presents.
Keeping in focus with the report, which it mentions talent and workforce. So what are some of the job opportunities that you see can be created in this transition?
We're looking at job impacts across 71 sectors, 9 aggregate sectors. I mean, we're looking at, again, transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, government. But there's also a higher skilled job opportunity there that pays higher, which is the part that I talked about, and a lot of specialization. So like programmers, designers, electricians. There's just a lot of different specialized skills that are going to be needed to service this new economy. And I think that presents a lot of interesting opportunity. And with that, you bring back the topic of the federal funds, right? They have a huge emphasis on workforce development. So this money is coming with a mandate to train and develop the workforce to be able to service then this industry and create that growth within community that we need. And again, back to the funds coming in with this workforce development component right into communities. For example, we just recently won a large grant. We're part of a coalition that won the Solar for All grant. It's $156 million for low-income solar across the state of Florida. That work of outreach and of engaging community individuals, we're going to have to engage workforce development agencies, universities, and all kinds of places that allow that entry point into the community. So with these large infrastructure investments that take us to a decarbonized future, come direct opportunities tied in intentionally to create jobs and skills and stronger communities that benefit from all of it.
I know the report mentions the city of Miami, Miami-Dade County throughout, and giving shout outs for some of its climate actions. Mm-hmm. Can you almost briefly list some of the efforts that are already underway that we're doing and maybe things that we should be doing as well?
Well, I mean, I think Miami-Dade's been incredibly innovative and sort of brave and courageous in taking, big leaps forward, naming the first chief heat officer and the chief bay officer. I mean, there's obviously an acknowledgement from this community that the environment is important. And now you have, the school board looking, the school district looking to electrify bus fleets and take advantage of these opportunities. We have the water management district also having conversations, thinking about ways to do that. We have developed a relationship with the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida, who are also in Miami-Dade County, to think about ways to create energy resilience and energy independence for those communities. So there's a lot of ways in which this work is happening, both led by the county and led by the municipalities, but also with partners like us and others that are stepping in and saying, where can we fill the gap, right? Where can we support and empower communities to have the ability and the skills to take advantage of these opportunities?
We just focused on the local level, and the report focuses on statewide.
Right.
Was there a big divide in between? Because I would imagine Miami-Dade County and the city of Miami, for instance, look very different than what's happening Tallahassee, Central Florida.
Oh yeah,
even on the West Coast.
Yeah, and we know that also not only through the study, but the Nature Conservancy is very involved with the climate compacts in the state, which are segmented by region. So we are looking at what counties and what regions sort of are leading. Miami-Dade being one of the ones that is. South Florida leading in general, and then seeing some of those pockets of opportunity where maybe there's some leaders raising their hand and saying, hey, we want to do this too. Like, is this an opportunity to have conversations with those communities where we see that there's some interest, but maybe lack of capacity and not knowing where to start? So can we use that too to say, here are some of the communities where we know there's a need and a want, and let's use the example of communities like ours to show others how to do it right.
Sounds like there's a lot of partnership. I know you mentioned that in the report too, the need for public-private partnership. You brought up a lot of stakeholders. You mentioned Opportunity in Miami, thank you, in the report. But you just mentioned right now work with the tribe, with different partners. Is that really kind of the way to get this going?
There are pockets, champions, sort of places around the state, people around the state that are leading, that are taking initiative. So it's looking at the whole map, the whole landscape, and really seeing where are those opportunities for equity, right? Where we can level the playing field and help others accomplish what maybe some communities are much more equipped to do. And engaging the diverse partners. I mean, you absolutely need the private sector. You absolutely need the government to be a part of it. And a lot of the times, NGOs like the Nature Conservancy end up being these brokers, these conveners, these community partners that can help fill some of those gaps and build some of that capacity based on data and expertise to strengthen those. But I mean, a lot of the sort of thinking behind this study is precisely to engage in conversation, to bring diverse partners to the table. The Nature Conservancy operates on philanthropic support, but we understand philanthropy isn't going to cut it. Philanthropy is not going to solve the problem of the climate and biodiversity crisis, of the problem of decarbonization. You need private investment, private capital, you need governments, and you need some philanthropic capital to hopefully create some of that catalytic, momentum that we are able to build, because we can afford to take a little bit more risk.
I want to close with envisioning the Miami 2040. I know the report says 2050. How do you envision then, on a local level, the Miami of 2040?
Well, I mean, I envision Miami being definitely one of the cities who's going to be, who's going to have some of the most innovative examples of how to get around the challenges too that, things like transportation pose. We have all of our hopes on the leadership in this community to show us the way, and on all the private capital that is very interested in coming in and being a part of that transformation of our community. I envision a community that's strong, that's leading, that's helping actually fill that gap from 2040 to 2050, that's helping bring more of that excitement and investment, because Miami's going to continue to shine, and it's going to continue to be this sort of almost like a lighthouse of saying, here, we're signaling, we want to do this here. This is a place where we need to get more of these minds to come together. So I envision Miami being the place that helps close the gap and that helps bring in the investors and the people who are equipped to make the transition happen. We got to get to work.
It's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for joining us, Sofia. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Suzette.